Chapter 1. The Moral Problem. Planet Earth seems perfect and flawless perhaps only when observed from space, for example, from the top of an orbital station. But when we approach it more closely, when we come into contact with humans, when we wander through their streets, then at that moment we become aware that down here dominates injustice, vice, perversion, as well as intellectual dishonesty, just like mediocrity, backwardness, lack of hygiene, filth, or even jealousy, manipulation, greed, materialism, consumerism, egocentrism, even fanaticism, and many other negative aspects of humans, sources of destruction, and among other things, premature deaths in this world. The exponential increase of all that is worst and most evil in the world, due in particular to unreasonableness, illogicality, and uber-mediocrity, both moral and spiritual, plunges humanity into an almost irreversible chaos between incivility, aggressiveness, brutality, violence, but also atrocities, savagery, barbarism, cruelty, bestiality, ferocity, and the most filthy of all, namely the attack on innocence, which is none other than the consequence of mental pathologies mixing all kinds of deviances, psychosensory, psychosensitive disorders, and mental retardations more or less pronounced and objectively affecting many individuals throughout the world, considering their brain figuratively unstructured, deconstructed, immature, disordered, due precisely to a serious immaterial deficiency in terms of moral and spiritual intelligence, and concerning the extremely important senses which compose it, shape it, define it, give it consistency and depth. Good reasoned, logical, moral, and virtuous behavior, a beautiful soul, a healthy mind, are the reflection of a brain that is sufficiently structured, sufficiently constructed, sufficiently mature, sufficiently ordered in terms of heart, guts, soul, and spirit. Some people think, for example, that mafias, organized criminal gangs of all kinds, the small and medium everyday scum, the hateful and aggressive bloodthirsty religious fanatics, are like cancer and that no treatment exists. Except this is not the case. There is, in fact, fortunately, as with any illness, an extremely effective, extremely powerful remedy, capable of fighting against evil, the bad, in everything and in everyone. It is morality. For just as darkness is the consequence of the absence of light, immorality is the result of the absence of morality. The latter, in fact, requires us to react to immorality, to filthiness, by forcing the psyche to a reaction of self-defense, a sort of immunological reaction, and even to the awakening of the instinct of anticipation in the face of threats and villainous, sadistic, perverse, cruel, ultra-violent, fanatical, merciless, inhumane attacks committed by individuals who choose to inflict physical and psychological harm on all those they decide to condemn to the status of victims. Individuals who do not have a morally structured character, thus having only a barely developed or even non-existent sense of analysis, criticism, and moral judgment, live like lobotomized people, since they are precisely limited in terms of good sense and morality. Those are not sensitive, among other things, to absolute and universal justice, to moral responsibility, to the notion of self-sacrifice in an intelligent and constructive way, and therefore for the benefit of life and the living, to the very notion of effort, both cerebral and physical, to the sense of duty, that of doing good, of doing well, and that of being exemplary, or even to common sense and benevolence, nor to any other values, virtues, and principles of a higher, transcendent, and universal order, but conversely, subject to innumerable manipulations, since they allow their character to be shaped by the consumerist systems and celebrities of this world, atheists and theists alike. For those individuals, in an undifferentiated way, money, fun, material success, power and control over others high social status, luxury, as well as spectacular extreme experiences in absolutely every deviant aspects of life, perverse and unhealthy, and even primitiveness and sectarianism of all kinds are the norm and the priority, and not dignified and exemplary behavior, nor centers of interest and higher universal principles gravitating around the good sense and the concept of morality, which is extremely distressing, deplorable, and irresponsible, since living by refusing to behave well in life, with integrity, probity, elegance, courtesy, delicacy, but also with righteousness, rectitude, intellectual honesty, or even moral conscience, and by not doing nothing concretely to improve one's own character in a world of widespread immorality, is the greatest mistake a human can make, who therefore accepts, in this way, being part of the cause of the decline of humanity and the annihilation of life in the broadest global sense. Inhumanity, betrayal, deception, lies, irresponsibility, illnesses, suffering, wars, disrespect, conflicts of opinion, or even misunderstandings are only the corollaries of a single problem and source of all negative, destructive, and unjust consequences on earth. The moral problem, which is in fact nothing less than the relative or complete absence of universal moral values and principles among individuals. It is therefore the consequence of the rejection of the universal moral law, or rather, of contempt and non-respect for the basic principles of life and health. If this world would become more moral, so that human beings would finally begin to strengthen their own moral sense, and therefore their character, through universal values, virtues, and principles of moral and spiritual order, obviously consolidated by reason and applied logic. If they would grasp, regardless of genes, phenotype, or belonging to this or that people, nation, or culture throughout the world, regardless of whether they are rich or poor, that they are directly responsible for all the consequences of their bad acts committed throughout their lives, since they do not seriously work on themselves to become real human beings worthy of the name, and they are, likewise, indirectly responsible for any evil induced by other parasitic individuals, by their inaction in the face of immorality and the destruction it causes from every point of view. If they would grasp that a moral life, namely, doing on a daily basis everything that is of a higher nature and order, fundamental, exceptional, sublime, apotheotic, eminent, supreme, and perfect, is precisely everything that is universally good, positive, constructive, responsible, reasoned, logical, healthy, just, ethical, moral, and virtuous, as well as everything that is fine, peaceful, natural, true, exemplary, honest, worthy, honorable, respectful, benevolent, wise, and transcendent, is the only way to achieve universal harmony on planet Earth, or rather world peace, and the big sensible step, philosophical, scientific, moral, and spiritual, towards a healthy improvement of humanity. Only then this world would begin to heal and get truly better. Indeed, the whole world would calm down and become peaceful. There would no longer be any reason or room for quarrel and discord, but instead the search for revolutionary solutions with the aim of protecting life, living, nature, and innocence, and thus magnify all the values, virtues, and principles of higher, transcendent, and universal order. Because then solutions and agreements would be found at absolutely all levels and in all areas, and humanity would begin finally to accomplish its worthy and honorable existential goal. However, to do this in a coherent, structured, and intelligent manner, it is important that everyone carries out a deep existential introspection. Therefore, that everyone looks at themselves in the mirror of morality, truth, honesty, and absolute and universal justice, and therefore ask oneself the right questions linked to the very quintessence of life, namely, what positive things have I done in life so far? What can I do about the perceptible and unbearable injustice in this world? Which value system do I want to be assimilated to? What kind of person do I want to be at the end of my life? What message and imprint do I want to leave behind when I die? What are the most important and sublime principles and character traits that I want to develop so that they define me? What is ultimately the purpose of my existence, and what can I bring to this world that is universally worthy and honorable? Anyone endowed with a minimum of seriousness, wisdom, reason, logic will find the appropriate answers to this type of introspection. For so many years, centuries, millennia, women and men have struggled to grasp the meaning of life, to understand this world, to find inner peace and tranquility of the soul. So much pain in the heart and torture of the mind, so much blood shed throughout history that today it would be completely irresponsible and insane, the greatest shame, even suicidal, with all our knowledge accumulated so far of the life and history of humanity, to ignore sound and logical scientific conclusions and universal, non-restrictive key answers for a better present and future on the basis of a total change in value system on a global scale. The time has therefore come for everyone today to take responsibility for their lives and their actions, or in this case, to begin to live morally without any fanaticism of any kind, whether from religious or atheist order, so that finally and definitively this world gets cured of its cancer and all its innumerable metastases. The moral problem truly being the source and cause of all disorder and misfortune on this planet, and therefore the only real problem that must be addressed and resolved as an absolute priority. While all the other things, bad and negative, that individuals experience in their lives and which arise from this original problem are only the consequences of this tumor which devours everything in its path without absolutely any awareness and therefore no pity. So all energies must be combined and directed towards resolving this single problem, through a healthy way of thinking and living and exemplary behavior, through fair and balanced choices, a change in operating system and priorities, a paradigm shift, and finally an education centered on a healthy and universal moral foundation. But to get there, individuals must take their responsibilities and intensely develop their moral sense so that in practice, living conditions on Earth can be concretely improved and humanity thus preserved, just like this planet, from total annihilation initiated by parasites. Therefore, psychically disturbed individuals, perverse, sadistic, and tyrannical, who are the germ of immorality in this world, or in other words, cancer cells, which inflict great damage not only on humanity, but also on nature and to all other innocent and harmless living organisms in this original, nevertheless so beautiful world.